Morning and welcome to day 2 of this week. Tuesday morning, my least favorite day of the week, as Monday even has a feel to it. Starting off a new week, some optimism there, even though Monday kind of sucks. But Tuesday gives you no feel. There's nothing to look forward to. You're still close to hump day, but you're not yet there. You're not yet to the weekend. Tuesday is my least favorite day, but nonetheless, this is Tuesday morning here, as this is mic'd up here for this Tuesday morning on Pittsburgh Sports Live and, of course, Pittsburgh Sports Now. Mike Asti, and I am joined alongside, as always, by Mike Vukovcan. And not major news happening in the last 24 hours, but still certainly some news. We are in the madness of March, so it makes sense to start off with some college basketball talk. We are going to talk about some college basketball news, some possibilities of some major Blue Bloods not being a part of the madness of March, or at least the NCAA tournament this year, and if that's good or bad for college basketball, because this is a weird year. We didn't have the tournament last year. We get it this year. We're not taking it for granted. But some of those institutions that have been there for 2 decades, 25 years in Duke's case, they maybe have taken it for granted because they're probably not going to be there this year. And actually that could be a positive, or maybe it could be a negative for college basketball overall in this NCAA tournament. We're also going to touch on some NFL news with Dak Prescott finally signing on the dotted line for his new deal, and maybe the top young quarterbacks that we would take as Dak finally gets his money. Kind of surprising, honestly. I thought Jerry was going to kind of drag that out even further. That war between the two of them ends with Dak getting his money. But before we get there, we are going to talk about a story that has been gaining traction and certainly been sparking all over Pittsburgh Sports Now, with some comments Heather Lyke said about her head coach, Jeff Capel. And we've talked about this, Mike, on recent shows here on this morning show. We talked about it on post-game shows with Alan and I and others about Jeff Capel once again having his Pitt team kind of decline towards the end of the season, not make the tournament, not have the success that many would have thought. How long his leash is, how long the rope is, because there were tons of fanfare from fans and media when he took the job, a disciple of Coach K, and figuring that there's still rope with Heather Lyke. But Heather Lyke made some interesting comments recently that kind of, you could argue, throws the coach under the bus. And for the first time, really, since he became the head coach at Pitt, doesn't appear they're in lockstep.
He was reprimanded. He hasn't been the only coach this year that has done that. I forget which national website had a screenshot of comments similar to what the Pitt athletic department issued last night regarding Capel's comments blasting the officials following the season-ending loss. He talked about how it's been unfair since he's been there for 2 years. It's ridiculous. He talked about it was probably as pissed as I've seen Jeff Capel as a head coach sticking up for his player and his star player. And he was making reference to how Champagny plays down low and how few foul shots he gets, how other teams are allowed to get away. And he also got into a big issue down the stretch for Pitt has been the large amount of technical fouls that their players have been getting for demonstrative. I think a lot of them have been questionable. Other teams seems to be doing the same thing.
That was Xavier Johnson's issue.
Yeah, exactly. And
kind of
refs, it's been a string here by, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 games in a row where they're getting teed up all over the place. And Capel just says things aren't fair. It's funny how he's saying it's not fair coming from Duke, where when people But Pitt fans have been very opinionated on this topic, and they're all siding with Jeff Capel. Here are some comments on Pittsburgh Sports Now. Terrence O'Toole says Pitt needs to get off their high moral train. Do you think if Nick Saban said what Capel said, that he'd have been publicly reprimanded? What Capel said was spot on, and it applies to the football team as well. Randy Josic said Heather Lyke just threw Jeff Capel under the bus. Coach Capel expressed his views in a professional manner. He is stating reality. The calls in football and basketball go against Pitt. Heather should be talking to the ACC offices on Pitt's behalf. Hail to Pitt. It goes on, but we're only going to read a couple. What are your thoughts on that, Mike? Does she, when your coach publicly and in the manner he criticized the officiating in the ACC. As his boss, do you have a problem with him or with her stepping out and criticizing for it, or should she just let him get fined and say nothing?
Number one, I was surprised that he went that far out on a limb and was that venomous with his comments after that game. As you mentioned, Jeff Capel was defending players, which you want your head coach to do, and maybe it was just that last straw that broke the camel's back. I am sure Jeff Capel has been very frustrated the last couple of weeks with players leaving and the season kind of going out of control, and kind of feeling like he maybe lost control of the team. And what I said earlier, feeling like maybe another season got puttered away and now his clock is ticking. So I'm sure that frustration maybe finally boiled over. I was surprised he said what he said, but we've heard Hall of Fame coaches, you mentioned Coach K, Bob Huggins is another one earlier in the year, that often defend players, complain about referees. They take a fine. They feel like they have the cachet to go say it, and that they're just going to do whatever. And usually their athletic director, their institution, their college lets them go. You don't hear then the athletic director reprimand that head coach. This situation might be a little different because Jeff Capel doesn't have that cachet. He is still trying to figure things out at Pitt, trying to build that resume. He is still trying to make his own way after being a disciple of Coach K. But I was surprised by it. I'm sure the players don't mind it from Capel. He's trying to fight for his guys. If I'm Capel, I don't like hearing that from Heather Lyke. I certainly feel like that even if that is a situation that Heather Lyke believes, the professional thing to do is to say that to him behind closed doors.
Right.
Or I try to keep it as much behind closed doors as possible here in 2021 because things usually get out, but not to publicly be willing to have that get out there where it can be commented on outlets like Pittsburgh Sports Now. So I wouldn't like that if I'm him and I hear that from my boss saying that and reprimanding me publicly, because it cuts my knees out from under me and disrespects me regardless of my cachet. I also will say, from a fan perspective, based on some of the comments there in Pittsburgh Sports Now, I get Pitt fans wanting to defend the players as well because they feel like maybe they have been treated unfairly. And that happens with certain programs, certain middle-of-the-road programs in a major conference. This has been a theme of conference realignment the last decade, that, of course, the top dogs, the Kansas, the Texas, the Dukes, the North Carolinas, they're going to get all the calls and get every break they possibly can on a regular basis. But a Pitt program is going to have to fight for everything. Nothing's going to be handed to them, and they're not going to get the calls, especially against those programs. That kind of has been the case. I still, though, personally do find it, while I understand Capel defending his guys and being frustrated, I just am a guy that I hate referee blaming. Yeah, I get the calls are bad. I certainly agree with him in that game in particular. But Pitt lost a lot of games they should have won. They got blown out to Notre Dame after they thought they finally had the brass by the horns and able to take control of this season. Pitt didn't get in the tournament this year and have a successful year because of Pitt's problems, not because the referees screwed them out of it. So I do normally hate blaming the referees and pointing to them too much. That kind of does feel like excuse blaming. I don't normally like that personally, but regardless, especially when it's a head coach that you're not firing this year and you're still trying to appear that you're in lockstep with, even if maybe the leash is a little tighter than it was last year, saying that publicly is rough. And I was surprised that not only Capel would say it, but even more so surprised that Heather Lyke would provide any type of non-friendly commentary, because comparing to the football program, I would say Jeff Capel's situation at Pitt basketball is probably better with the fans than maybe Pat Narduzzi with Pitt football, even though he's not going anywhere either. Yeah, we've talked about that before on Pitt post-game shows, and you don't hear Heather Lyke smashing Pat Narduzzi publicly. So that normally isn't something that I would enjoy, certainly, if to my superior doing that to me, or even a coworker, or really anyone you're in a professional relationship doing that to you publicly and not privately.
Yeah, I think this is the first time Heather Lyke has been I believe the perception with her among Pitt fans has been that she's been a godsend as far as the things that she's done during her time. This is
right.
They didn't think about this before, but this has to be one of the first times that I've heard criticism of her since her taking over.
I can't remember it. Yeah,
I don't remember. Everything she's done has been, for I would say almost universally praised by Pitt fans as far as her innovation and thoughts and just how her getting things done. This is despite what's going on this year, Pitt fans still really like Jeff Capel. They believe he's going to get it done. I think they're realistic about what he's up against as far as the conference goes. So I don't think I think there's more frustration with them just losing than Jeff Capel himself. But
it could be they both unraveled. Maybe they're both just frustrated, honestly, and maybe they'll be able to wrap things up and get back on the same page. Do want to mention, of course, mic'd up here for this Thursday morning, brought to you by Martin Lawn Services. There, call Martin 412-849-5894 for all your lawn care service needs here. Mike Vukovcan, Mike Asti. But Mike, as we pivot now, obviously the Pitt season didn't go the way Pitt fans would want it. It didn't go the way Heather Lyke would want it. Didn't go the way Jeff Capel would want it. There's still a tournament in terms of the ACC, but it's not been the year that Pitt fans would have wanted this year, certainly in March, certainly off of the expectations and where this team was a few months ago and even after that staple win versus Duke. But we later learned about that Duke team that Capel has a lineage from, that's the worst Duke team in 25 years. This is a Duke team that's not going to be a part of the NCAA tournament either. This is a Duke team that's coming off of embarrassing losses of their own, including to their rival North Carolina. This is a Duke team that lost players as well, that has dealt with everything. And Coach K has been complaining up a storm this year. You don't see his A team throwing him under the bus, but this is a Duke team that's not really had a great year, to say the least. But it's not just Duke. Kentucky, North Carolina, Syracuse. They might be the first four in. They might be the first four out for some, but regardless, they didn't have a great year. Indiana is another one. Several programs that are normally blue bloods. And honestly, Mike, we talk about the Big 12 being so deep. Kansas is going to be a player. They're going to be a contender in the conference tournament. They've been ranked this year, but it's still a bad year for Kansas. They haven't been in the top 10 in a long time. They're barely hanging to the top 25 most of the year. They've uttered out of it at this point. So it's not like Kansas is even having a great year. A lot of blue bloods either having down years, having poor seedings, or not making the tournament at all. And it'll be interesting if they even want to do an NIT, because that'll be really embarrassing for some of those programs. What are your thoughts on having a March Madness, having an NCAA tournament without so many blue bloods? And don't even get us started on UCLA for so many years and their issues and being a blue blood that seemingly can't get back to glory after former Pitt head coach Ben Hallen was ushered out the door. Is it good for basketball? Is it good for college basketball? Or is it actually bad for college basketball to have so many blue bloods basically irrelevant in that Final Four national championship picture already now in early March? Some might be excited to get a Cinderella in there, but for me, there's some negative to this as well.
Oh, yeah. I think there's a couple sides to this. As a fan, fans in general, for the brackets and interest and stuff, just people talking.
Sure.
I think it's good. I think there's nothing wrong with that, because I think in college football, we see the fact that the same, you right now today, before there's spring practice, you can pick two or three of the teams that are going to be in the Final Four.
Sure.
I don't think that, aside from Gonzaga, I think there's a case for who knows. I think it's wide open. I think Gonzaga is probably the only lock to be in there, and I think that's good for a sport. However, for the networks, I think, and I could care less about CBS and TNT. I can tell you that just being in the TV business before, this will be bad for TV ratings, because they love having those programs to promote. They love having Coach K. They love having Izzo. They love having Coach Cal and all those guys to be a part of Madness, the name, the program.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to watch
Bayheim, right?
Yeah. Nobody's going to watch Purdue. Nobody's going to watch UNC Charlotte, even if they make it. That's not good for TV ratings wise, which generates money for them. But as far as the overall interest to the sport and stuff, I think it's good. And I enjoy watching it, no matter. I know the argument is, well, they'll only win one or two games at the most. So what? That's I think it's cool. 20 year, however long later, people still talk about Robert Morris beating Kentucky, even though it's something that will probably never ever happen again.
Right.
During that NIT or whenever that was, that's something that's a conversation piece that people still have. So when these when this stuff happens, I think it's good. And some of these programs, I think, might be a little bit underrated as far as how good they actually are. And now they'll have a chance to actually go in there and compete.
And you mentioned RMU beating Kentucky. I have a RMU tournament T-shirt on right now, just by happen chance. I was actually working for that athletic department as a broadcaster for the women's basketball team at that point, around that same time frame, and that was a big deal to say the least. I mean, it was insane in terms of the hoop around that game, and you can understand, obviously, that was a defending Kentucky national championship team. Even though half of those Kentucky players were in the NBA, the starting five was gone. They were in the NBA already. It was a different Kentucky team that had won the title, but still, it was a big deal for RMU. And you look at, it's still a blue blood, and it's still a big deal for RMU, and it's helped build them a program. It has kind of helped build them into a new arena. It added a lot of fan interest based on that win. You look at George Mason's run. You look at all these different upset Cinderella runs. My only pushback would be, I think and even this goes to RMU beating Kentucky in NIT, even though it wasn't the NCAA tournament. The best result for the NCAA tournament, the best result for March Madness, the best result for everyone, the TV business, the fans, everyone coming together, the media even, is to have a Duke, Kentucky, Michigan State, some of those teams there, and then also have a George Mason run or some of those Cinderella runs and mix them in. I think the best Final Four result is to maybe have two of the Blue Bloods with two Cinderellas, or even programs that are normally good but haven't won in a while, or something like that. If Pitt could make a run, that would even be special for Pitt, having not done a Final Four before. So something like that, where you get some history, you get some differenceness than you had. Even, honestly, you mentioned Gonzaga. Gonzaga's in that murky water where they're not a blue blood, but they have history and they've been around so long and they're chalk right now. But they hadn't gone to a Final Four prior to recently, and once they got in, that was good, even as a 1 seed, because it was something new at least.
Now the stakes are up this year.
Of course, they got to do it now. But I think having all the 1 seeds, that's not really great for the casual fan. But I do think having none of those blue bloods and losing all of the blue bloods, and of course you're still going to have some good programs in there, but losing all of the blue bloods mostly this year, and it's a weird COVID year, especially after not having the tournament at all last year. Overall, that's probably not good, because this is the one tournament, like the Super Bowl, I guess would be the other comparison, that even non-sports fans are going to fill out a bracket. They might be filling out a bracket off of their favorite animal or their favorite nickname or whatever. But even people filling it out that way, they know Duke. They know Kentucky. They know those programs. They're going to fill them out to go far. Without having them there, you got to wonder if it even scares some of them people to fill out the bracket, if they're going to watch less. I actually had a coworker the other day say, oh, yeah, well, the NCAA tournament, I got to take a half day on this day because I know that's when North Carolina's going to play. I looked at him and said, we don't know nothing about when North Carolina's going to be playing yet. Yeah, you got to let this ACC tournament play. And he was like, oh, yeah, that's right. They're having a down year despite the recent win. So it's a different year. It's different. I think there's going to be tons of interest in ratings this year because we didn't have it last year. So honestly, you and I could form a team in the backyard of PSN crew and they would watch because you just didn't get it all last year. Yeah, but to lose the blue bloods and lose all of them, I think it's one thing when you lose a couple, but to lose them all, that's interesting. It will also be interesting, though, the ones that squeeze in that didn't have great years, but like a Kansas, like maybe a Syracuse, maybe a Michigan State, teams that maybe could squeeze into the tournament somehow, unlike Duke this year, if they could make a Cinderella run based on seeding, even though they're a blue blood. Because, for example, the example of that is recently with one of Calipari's runner-up years where he got to the final game, surprisingly, with Kentucky as a 9 seed, despite being a blue blood, and then they end up losing in the national championship. I believe that was when UConn beat them with Kevin Ollie. But that was out of nowhere. Kentucky was a blue blood, but they weren't having a great year and weren't supposed to go that far. But this is what happens when you have talent, when you have tons of talent and all those recruits, that it wouldn't shock me if Kansas would somehow make a run.
It's prediction time. Pitt gets underway tomorrow with the ACC tournament first round. Who knows how long they're going to last? The 2:00 first round game against Miami.
Sure.
I'm going to give my quick predictions. No explanation. Just go to Rivers and mark it down. And I never lose this. So here's where I'm going. I'm going to start. Okay. I'm going to give all the major conferences. Plus, I'll throw in the Big East. Pac-12. I'm going Oregon,
Okay.
Big East, I'm going to go a little surprise here, and I'm going to say St. John is going to make a run.
Okay.
And with
That'd be cool. I would kind of like that. Yeah.
Injury to Gillespie for Villanova, I think that's going to hurt them. I'm going to go with St. John's there. Big 12, I'm going Kansas.
Okay.
I'm going Kansas winning. Big 10, I'm going to go chalk there and say Michigan, number 1 seed, is going to win. SEC, I'm in a little surprise. I think that's kind of wide open though. But
Okay.
Tennessee, and then the ACC, I'm going North Carolina. I'm going to I think they're 3 or 4 seeds somewhere there, but I'm going to say Virginia loses and Virginia Tech isn't that good. And I'm going to go with Roy Williams' team making a little run here in March.
Okay. Mike Vukovcan, Mike Asti here, mic'd up by Martin Lawn Services here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Mike and Mike in the morning. Interesting picks there for sure. I wouldn't mind St. John's for this coming to America part 2, debuting recently, kind of harken back to the original with that movie. It would be kind of cool. Kansas and Michigan end up being chalk regardless, so that'll be interesting. I think Ohio State maybe could do it in the Big Ten. Tennessee, that is a crapshoot in the SEC.
Yeah.
And then North Carolina there. But Mike, as we pivot away from basketball now, this is March Madness. We're going to talk a lot of basketball, I'm sure, on these morning shows, but pivoting away from basketball a bit here as we close up shop on this Tuesday edition of the show. The news of the last 24 hours, the major headline news is not local, it's not regional, it's national. It is Dak Prescott finally getting that money, getting that contract out of Jerry Jones that they've been arguing over for seemingly 2-3 years now. They weren't going to franchise him again because that would just be ludicrous money, but they give him a mega deal nonetheless. So I do want to ask you now, seeing that money from Dak, and I think we both realize that the highest paid quarterback does not mean you're the best. Usually the next guy up for a contract just gets the most money. Matthew Stafford was the highest paid for a long time. And while I think he's underrated and good, certainly not the best in the league, and we'll see what he does with the Rams. But out of the young quarterbacks, because there are a lot of them these days, there's a lot of quarterbacks that are young and having somewhat of success or having some hype around them in this NFL. Yes, Aaron Rodgers is MVP. Yes, Brady won a championship again. But there are a lot of young quarterbacks that are still having success, from the Bakers to the Deshaun Watsons to Josh Allen, etc. Who would be your top 5 young quarterbacks? So young, 32 and under at the oldest, I guess, who you would want to build a team around, maybe even 30 and under. Top 5 youngest you'd want to build a team around.
My answer is going to be one of the reasons why the Steelers, this could be they're going to have to do some reconstruction here, because I think if you ask me, I think the 5 best young quarterbacks in the AFC will be in the NFL will come out of the AFC. I don't think any of them come out of the NFC.
Okay.
Of course, Mahomes is one. That's the boring one, but it's a smart one.
Right. That's for sure. For sure.
Yeah, you
still very, very young, but
somebody else. But in the end,
no, he's LeBron right now.
Right. Exactly. Patrick Mahomes. After that, I'm going. If I had my choice, I know there's been some talk about some other guys, but I'm going Justin Herbert from San Diego. I think that guy is I can tell you my fantasy leagues next year.
Yeah, LA now. Yeah.
San Diego.
They should still be San Diego.
I could pass on it, but I always screw that up. Herbert's number 2.
Okay.
Number 3, I'm going Josh Allen, Buffalo. That guy, what I see of his arm is nobody in the NFL, and I'd give it even to Mahomes. Nobody has an arm like Josh Allen. If he actually gets a running game behind him,
right,
and another receiver to complement Diggs, that team could be scary for many years. 4 is going to be Deshaun Watson.
Okay.
And 5, I'm just going on potential here. If I'm going by who I'm projecting is going to be really good, I think Burrows with the Bengals is going to be a super duper superstar. I think.
Yeah.
The only thing that might hurt him is playing for the Bengals, and there might be, just some bad mojo, that comes down on him. But I obviously the knee injury plays into that.
Sure.
But I love Joe Burrows. I think he is. Those would be my 5 guys if I'm starting a franchise. I'd pick them above anyone else.
It's hard to hate any of those. I do love Joe Burrow, honestly. He has the cachet from the national title and all the success. We didn't get to see a full season of him his rookie year. He was having a great start to that year, despite being on the Bengals. And you hope he's healthy and can actually do it well for the Bengals. Interesting, that was the only AFC North pick you had, because this also plays into recent conversation of Ben being said to be the worst quarterback in the division right now, which I honestly don't think is that much of a criticism. He's well older than all of them, so they should have more of a future than him right now. But just curiosity, Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson, not in that mix. Some do put them there. I actually agree mostly with your 5, despite it a little different order for me. I think I would probably have Josh Allen maybe number 2 behind Mahomes. I'd love Josh Allen. I really do think he could even become the best Bills quarterback of all time over Jim Kelly with that team around him. That's possible. He's like a young Big Ben is the comparison for Josh Allen. But any thoughts to Baker or Lamar being in that 5, or are they just clearly not there for you?
I've never, since he started, have been a fan of Lamar Jackson. I think he's a phenomenal athlete. I think he's a great runner. I think he stinks as I just don't think he's any good throwing.
I hear you. I'm not disagreeing.
When you get to the pressure games and you get to the money games, his true colors show up. Teams will find a way, unless you have a sieve of a defense, he's going to, and you allow him to run all over the place. If you make Lamar Jackson throw you the football, he can't do it. And Baker Mayfield, I'm okay with. Actually, if I had to pick one or the other and I had equal weapons on both teams, I would take Baker Mayfield over Lamar Jackson, just because he could throw the ball. My quarterback has to be able to throw a football. This is not Madden, Madden 21 and video game football. You got to throw a football, and I just don't. The Ravens will be wasting a lot of money on Lamar Jackson because that's the next domino to fall here.
They're going to have to pay him,
and Lamar Jackson's going to get his next, and they're going to give in and give him a ton of money, and they'll regret it.
I actually, and maybe this is boring for a talk show, I'm right there with you on Lamar. It's not so much that he can't throw, because I agree. He doesn't have as much of a throwing touch as a quarterback that you would want to build your franchise around. He can't even complete the checkdowns, which at least was something that Cam Newton used to be able to do, and Vic did a little bit better in his prime. But the numbers are going to be there, and he is athletic. So maybe for a short period of time, Lamar can get it done. My issue is, it looks almost like a better version of RG3, and we saw what would happen with him eventually, that he doesn't give you the belief he can be there for the next decade. Even if he can be another MVP contender, even if he can do it for 2 or 3 more years in his own way, to do it for 10 full years, give him a mega deal, I feel like he's going to get hurt. I feel like he's going to wear down. He doesn't complete enough passes. His complete percentage isn't there. I wouldn't feel as comfortable as I would with some of those other guys either. Granted, they're going to be forced into doing it. And Baker, to me, I think is going to be a guy they're going to be forced into paying. He certainly was better last year than the year before. He's had a lot of weapons be hurt. However, I do think Baker Mayfield's on the verge of being a little overrated. Browns fans bragging a lot about Baker Mayfield. And if you look at the overall numbers, very similar to Big Ben last year, who many think is washed up overall. So
I would take Derek Carr as a quarterback.
He had a great year last year. A very underrated
I would take him over Baker Mayfield or Lamar Jackson.
Okay. I wouldn't mind if Derek Carr could get into another team, into another system, and get away from John Gruden a little bit, who's so hard on quarterbacks. But his numbers last year, after dealing with all the high AB drama of not actually having him the year before, Derek Carr had maybe the quietest great year last year. If you look at the numbers, over 4,000 yards passing, TD to interception ratio, really, really good. Completion percentage at 67%. I don't know why I have those memorized, but he had a great year last year that no one talks about, and his weapons aren't really plentiful with Vegas either. So it'll be interesting, because I agree with most of your 5, despite maybe switching out the rankings. But some of those players, we might be talking on a future show here, because they're looking for either a new team or the team is looking to get rid of them. The Raiders seemingly shopping Carr. Watson wants out of Houston. Russell Wilson, who's on the older side, of course, and beyond his prime, but a Hall of Famer who's still kind of young, early 30s, maybe looking for somewhere else to play, even though I would never move him if I'm the Seahawks. So it'll be interesting. We never really see this much quarterback moving in an offseason. I don't know if any of these guys are actually going to get moved, because unlike NBA players, it's very, very hard to move a quarterback. You don't have the leverage. But a lot of those futures are in flux right now on the ones that you mentioned, and the two top dogs for me, and Josh Allen and Mahomes, are the ones with their futures the most secure. They're not going anywhere.
I don't think Houston has any. I don't think they have. He just has them, by the proverbial, as far as with the leverage. They have to move him. They're just looking for the best deal possible. They're going to have their public statement of, we're not trying to move him. We're not moving him. All they're trying to do is get their asking price up. And
they got to get value
or whatever. I'm not sold on Tua.
No, I'm not sold on Tua either.
I haven't seen enough to make an evaluation of him yet, but I would. I don't want to speak on him yet until I see more of him. But that would be a bad move for the Texans. They're going to trade him, but who knows how many number one picks they're going to get along with him. I would guess that that's going to be the landing spot for him, either Miami or the Jets.
Yeah, and the only real quick, the only other one that's thrown out there would be the only young NFC quarterback that you didn't mention that some would put in their top 5, and Kyler Murray, because as funny as this would be with Hopkins and J.J. Watt now with Arizona, there has been a random report by a very tenured Houston beat writer saying that he's actually heard rumblings of considering a Watson for Kyler Murray swap. Murray is a younger version of Watson. He's not nearly as accomplished. That would give all 3 of the Houston Texans stars in Arizona, as funny as that would be. But that would be the only move, because Murray's better than Tua for me. That would be the only move that would give the Texans comparable quarterback play for the future, maybe needing a draft pick or 2 mixed in there. Yeah. It'll be interesting because we also saw what the Rams had to do to get rid of Jared Goff with his deal, and the picks that were swapped for even an older quarterback in Stafford. So if Watson's traded, there's going to be a lot involved there. It'll be interesting. And Kyler Murray is the only other quarterback that could maybe move in that top 5 from the NFC, especially with Hopkins and that team. I think he has tons of promise, but we will see. It's a wait and see approach, but the NFL is plentiful with tons of young talent, young quarterbacks, regardless of where they are. We get that Rodgers, a veteran, won an MVP. We get that Brady, 42 years old, won a Super Bowl again. But aside from them, there's tons of young quarterbacks around them that are bringing the future of the NFL to success. So that does it for Tuesday morning. This is day 2 of week 2 of Mic'd Up here, Pittsburgh Sports Live's morning show, Mike and Mike in the Morning, brought to you by Martin Lawn Services. So that's it for us, for Mike Vukovcan, for all of us throughout the Now family of networks, of course, Pittsburgh Sports Now and PSL. Want to remind you, smash that subscribe button and follow PSN over there for all their coverage. Also, check out all the websites throughout the network, the family of networks here, for what we're going to be covering throughout the day. So good morning. It's Tuesday. We're not yet at hump day, but we're almost there. And keep tabs here for another edition of Mic'd Up in the Morning tomorrow morning.